Time roulette. In today's class, we're going to discuss something that's more than just a theory. It's more like a card game philosophy and actually extends to every game that has ever existed, and that is the dichotomy of simplicity versus evolution. If we think about games in general, we find that some maintain everything for years, even centuries, like chess, whereas some release expansion packs and evolve their offering, such as Warcraft. So there isn't a one-size-fits-all answer here, and it truly does depend on the game and the player base. But for the purposes of our discussion, we're going to narrow it to card games because this is of course card game theory, and in particular, Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card games the likes of Yu-Gi-Oh!, Magic, and Pokemon typically lean toward evolution, and this is by virtue of how the game is designed. We get new product drops regularly throughout the year, so it only makes sense that the game will introduce new twists and turns compared to a card game based on a static card pool, like any card game that uses a 52 card deck. Moreover, evolution keeps players engaged. It would be pretty dull if the best move after all these years was still normal summon La Jin and activate Raigeki. The trick here though is that while evolving the game keeps old players engaged, making it too complicated may deter new players from joining, hence the balancing act of it all. From a premise standpoint, we likely all agree that a game like Yu-Gi-Oh! Should evolve. The question is how much and to what extent is simplicity sacrificed? Every game has a core concept. For Monopoly, make the most money. For Mario Kart, finish the race before everyone else. For Yu-Gi-Oh!, the core concept is to reduce your opponent's life points to zero, alternative win conditions notwithstanding. We can further elaborate on this by explaining in general terms how you accomplish it. By summoning monsters, i.e. placing them on your field, using spells and traps to strengthen your game state and weaken your opponents, then attack with your monsters to reduce your opponent's life points to zero. These concepts have stayed the same in Yu-Gi-Oh! Over its 25 plus years of existence, to the extent that if you introduce the game to a new player, whether today or in 1998, you could say what I just said and convey what the game is about. The way you go about these things varies over time, but the core concept remains, and it is from this core that everything else evolves. As mentioned previously, a game like Yu-Gi-Oh! Naturally evolves due to the expansion in the card pool, but expansion alone doesn't make for evolution. Our card game evolves in one of four ways. A. Make cards do more things within the confines of the rules. B. Change the rules. C. Introduce new mechanics. And D. Introduce new ways to play the game. In the first case, we can measure this in Yu-Gi-Oh! By a number of ways. The number of effects a card has, the number of combos a player can make, the number of special summons per turn, and I could go on, but the point here is that all of these things have always existed in the game. Cards have always had effects, combos and special summons have always existed, but the emphasis on them has changed, which in turn has shifted the emphasis on what strategies work best. For example, the battle phase isn't nearly as significant today as it was before, and this is a product of cards having more effects that work outside of the battle phase. In the second case, rule changes typically evolve the game by reining in some aspect. For example, the advent of the Forbidden List in 2004, the removal of the first turn draw in 2014, and the changes to pendulum summoning in 2017. Not always though, as an example of a rule change that boosted power was in 2014 when Konami declared that both players can control a field spell. In the third case, new mechanics are the main thing people point to when they think about evolution in Yu-Gi-Oh! I don't have to parrot all the jokes and or discuss people have for synchros, Xyz, pendulums, and links, but these are the best examples in Yu-Gi-Oh! Of how it has evolved, by allowing you to do things you couldn't do before in order to accomplish the core concept. And in the fourth case, you can take the same exact card pool and core concept and repackage the gameplay. For example, Master Duel, Duel Links, Rush Duel, Speed Duels, Battle Packs, and Tag Teams. For our discussion though, we're going to focus on the core game. Yu-Gi-Oh!'s evolution has resulted in one main complaint. Can you do too much in one turn? You might hear multiple complaints like, the game is too fast, I need a magnifying glass to read these cards, OTKs and FTKs are too prevalent, it's all about negate, power creep! I don't understand the extra deck, but they all bubble back up to the main complaint, can you do too much in one turn? And this is where I want to turn the discussion over to you. Where do you land on these points? Are you in the camp where you feel that the game has evolved to the point of devolving, and if so, at what point in the game's history was good for you? Or are you in the camp where you feel that the game's evolution is a net good? And whichever camp you're in, how would you posit that the game continue to evolve in order to engage old players while staying simple enough to attract new players? I think this is one of the most important discussions we'll have because it dissects the direction of the game as a whole. This time, class isn't dismissed. Everybody hang back afterward and comment your thoughts. I look forward to reading them.